To order. Dick, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we will start our meeting by approving minutes of previous meetings, starting with the work session of January 28, 2013.
I move to approve the minutes as written.
Second. Ask that that be amended in the final paragraph to put in the modifier significant items being discussed, because we did talk about that. It's not that everything discussed at other committees needs to come back to the board.
I'll second that as amended.
All right, it's been moved, amended, and seconded as amended. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those minutes are approved. Next, we have the regular select board meeting of January 28, 2013.
I move they be approved as presented.
Second.
Been moved by Ray and seconded by Mike. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those minutes are approved. And we have the non-public meeting of January 28, 2013.
Move to approve those as written.
Second. It's been moved by Mike, seconded by Dick. All those in favor?
Aye.
And then we have the second public hearing on February 7, 2013. This concerned the petition warrant articles, of which we had none.
Oh, I move to approve those non-minutes.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And finally, we have the non-public meeting of February 7, 2013.
I move we approve those as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Ray, seconded by Charlie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain on those. Thank you. All right, that concludes the minutes. Announcements. The Select Board will meet on the following dates. Regular meetings at 6 p.m. on Monday, February 25th, 2013, and March 11, 2013. Work review sessions prior to the regular meeting will start at 5 p.m. All of these meetings will be held at the Town Hall unless otherwise posted. Weather observations for the month of January are available in the Town Hall. Citizens wishing to be listed on the Selectmen's agenda should notify the Town Hall before 12 p.m. on the Friday before the scheduled meeting. And finally, Plymouth State University will conduct a siren test tomorrow, that's Wednesday, February 20th, 2013, at 12 p.m. Okay. Moving on to new business. Buddy Crane, Tenney Mountain Project and Scope of Work. Would you like to come up?
Yes, sir.
Okay, my name is Bud Crane. I live in Plymouth, have for over 30 years. I own Andrews Construction. I am the contractor working on the Riverside project on Tenney Mountain Highway. And I'm coming to the board tonight just to kind of get on the record, or at least to be able to discuss with the selectmen about a planning board meeting from January that I watched from home on TV. And at the end of the meeting, some people spoke up after the public session and used it a little bit as a forum to make accusations that I, as a contractor, was out on Tenney Mountain Highway working and doing things with no permits, basically no regard for the process and so on. And I just felt compelled to come in and just talk about that with the board, because I felt I had gone through all the proper channels with the various, departments in town. And I know the rules, I play by the rules, and everything we are doing out there, as far as I know, and from the permits I physically have in hand, which the town has, we're legal to do what we're doing. I know there's a group in town that maybe doesn't like that, but we are playing by the rules and so on. And I just felt that, unfortunately, my name, and having lived in town for a while, it just wasn't fair that, I'm getting accused of roguely doing things out there that I shouldn't be doing. For the people that maybe don't know me, I've done this for 36 years. Same company. I think most people around town know me. I wouldn't just be going out there and doing these type of things. It's my own town, it's my own backyard. I raised my kids here. So I just felt I needed to kind of clear the air publicly, on the record, that if there's something that is amiss out there that I'm doing, I wish somebody would bring it to my attention. I can correct it or deal with it. If there's any information missing that somebody needs, I believe permits are filed at the town level. Copies, state permits are posted on the job site. I've told a number of people they're welcome. I've told all the town officials they're welcome to come to the site and look at things. So I guess, does the select board have any questions or concerns from either scuttlebutt or whatever that I can personally answer that would allow you to answer questions better?
But you've moved a lot of dirt from the back of that lot to the front of that lot for the purpose of constructing the 2 pads for those buildings that are planned for there right now, right?
Correct. Yep.
And that, I don't know, I'm no expert about this, but I think that the primary permit for that, is that called an alteration of terrain
Correct.
permit?
An AOT permit.
And
yes.
you get that from the state?
State of New Hampshire.
And you have that, and that's posted down there somewhere?
It's posted in the trailer.
And do you have an idea about how long ago you got that permit?
When we started work, so
Back
first
few
of
months.
December. Right.
And now, and you have other work to do there. I mean, what are you doing? You're working there right now. What is that you're doing?
Well,
right now?
the goal right now, up until last week, was to take, under the AOT permit, the dirt from what they call the flood compensation area, which is the lower area in the back, and move that dirt to the front to build up the 2 pads for McDonald's on the left, the bank on the right, and the shared access road. If you were to drive by this week, we're now starting to put the drain pipes, and the underground is an underground drainage system. The water will go into and then filter back into the ground. Those are the yellow, if you've been by, there's like these yellow half-round plastic things. We'll be doing that over the next couple of weeks. So we're now putting the actual infrastructure in for the drainage for right now the McDonald's pad, and then the bank pad will follow.
So I guess the main thing was somebody, it was Dick Flanders from Water and Sewer, I think, that you were primarily concerned about, right?
Yeah.
And it was the statement that he made at the planning board hearing, which was on January, was that the
I don't
January?
remember the date, but
17th?
the people from Riverside were in that night, and everybody had gone home, and I'm still watching it on TV, and kind of at the end, this stuff was kind of said at the end, and I'm not sure everybody that was there that night saw it. I saw it, but it was
But the
in plastic.
implication that you got from that was that you were doing work out there without the proper permits.
Oh yeah, that was pretty black and white, yeah.
Pretty clear about the way you said that. I haven't heard that from anybody else, nor do I believe that's the case.
I don't believe it's the case either.
I called Brian shortly thereafter to make sure, was there anything that I was missing, and then we were, as far as I know, we were fine. We checked with the town, but
I think, like so many people who work in town, Bud has an even more scrupulous interest in making sure that he's doing everything according to the books, because he knows everybody is watching everything that he's doing.
Well, I do. I mean, I know that, and I understand it. It's my town. I've looked at that cornfield for 30 years. I understand the impact it has, but I also understand, as a taxpayer, that we need a tax base, and Tenney Mountain Highway, it works, it fits, it's you know, it's a proper, I feel, it's prudent development out there, and you know, and I play by the rules, and I don't like to get accused of not playing by the rules. And it wouldn't matter what town, but yes, I'm at a higher degree. Everybody comes to that light. They see what's going on out there. So I know I'm under not only the town scrutiny. There's a bunch of state officials drive by there every day. OSHA officials go by there every day. I don't go anywhere in the state that somebody doesn't ask me about that site, because it's, they're all kind of moving the same construction circles. So it's under a lot of scrutiny. So you got to just that's fine. You just got to do it right.
Are there people who inspect that?
Yes.
From the state?
There's I have an independent engineer that's hired to watch everything that happens on the town's behalf, and then the town, through the developer, Mr. McGinley, the town engineer reviews those reports, and he comes out and does visual inspections on a regular basis on the site. So yeah, there is a process. There's actually been an engineer there every day since we started. Not right now, but during the filling operation, because they test it at all different levels. So yes, there's been an third-party engineer there the whole time.
Anyone else have any questions?
I mean, I guess, thank you for coming in. It's easy and cheap to make accusations, and it's harder sometimes to make a mistake if you don't have the facts. So I appreciate you following the regulations and coming in.
Absolutely.
I was basically, at any time I've got permission from Mr. McGinley, extend an offer to select board. It doesn't matter if anybody would like a tour of the site or whatever. I'm proud to show it, so I'll walk people around and show them everything. But I'm fine with that. If you wanna, I understand it and I like it. I love it, but it doesn't. People drive by, wonder why do you move the dirt over here, and in 2 days you move it over here. And, it may not make sense to the average person, but there's actually a method. There's actually a method to it. So.
Madam Chair, I have a suggestion as I listen to the discussions that we've had here and reflecting on what occurred that night. I think it would be prudent for this board to make it a point that when allegations are made, and for the most part they were very general in nature, they were not very specific, that when those kinds of things are occurring, that whoever is making those kinds of statements be directed that if they have a concern, they need to put it in writing and address it to the town hall. If they're not going to be specific and take the time to put it in writing, I just don't think they should be given a platform to be able to make these unfounded allegations. And when they're instructed, I think, to actually put it in writing, I think will help shut down some of that.
Well, those documents are all public. What was disappointing is they make the allegation, but all those documents are public.
Yeah.
They could have taken the time to come down here and found it out before they made a comment like that. Once that comment's out, it's out. So it's unfortunate, but
I think it's important that you did come in tonight to respond.
Thank you.
It's great. Thank you.
thank you for your time. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you for the effort.
Next on our agenda, we have the Local Government Center General Discussion and Update with Deb Reynolds.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the board for having me in. I know that your time is very valuable, and I don't want to take up a lot of your time on this tonight, because I know we have some other important citizens who have important matters that they'd like to talk to the board about. Really briefly, what I had done is contacted Paul Freitas, our town administrator, and indicated that I had requested that the board consider a RSA 91A request of the LGC Inc. regarding the expenditure of legal fees and costs and the administrative appeal regarding the order that was issued to require the repayment of about $52 million to the cities and towns and political subdivisions. And I also requested that the town consider writing to the Local Government Center, Inc., and requesting that the appeal be withdrawn. And I would be happy to share with you some of my rationale for that. I don't want to take up the entire night tonight, because I know there are other people who would like to speak with you about other important things. If I may, I did bring some documents that I thought would be helpful, if I could just pass them around. One of the things that brought this to my attention was that there was a front page article in the New Hampshire Sunday News.
And Paul actually shared that with us
Okay.
today.
And so I'm giving you another copy of that if you need another copy. And so just to put everything in a very, very simple form, because it's a very complicated story, and it continues to unfold. The Local Government Center, or the LGC Inc., was ordered to, by this hearings officer, who's a judge, to repay excess surplus, which under RSA 5B belongs to the cities and towns. And that came out sometime this summer. And as part of that, the ruling also required the risk pools not to swap money between them, Health Trust being the primary pool. We think over the years, I've heard some figures of as much as $8 billion of taxpayers' money having been funneled through this quasi-governmental entity. And I just want to note that our New Hampshire Supreme Court has ruled, and there's case law on this, that the LGC Inc. is a quasi-governmental entity. And that makes sense to me because it's all taxpayers' funds. This is not a private independent entity like Dartmouth College or Littleton Hospital, so forth and so on. The article in the paper that came out that I've provided to you says a couple of things that are very concerning to me. There are three primary risk pools that towns can buy insurance through the LGC with. One is Health Trust. Plymouth has its town employees' health insurance coverage provided through the Health Trust. There are two other lines of insurance that are funneled through the LGC. One is property liability for town buildings, and the other is workers' compensation. So what the article in the paper suggests is that the risk pool for the workers' compensation pool is at risk. And that's actually what the caption of the news article said. And I think the actual quote from the article is that the New Hampshire Local Government Center's Workers' Compensation Trust Program has lost more than $17 million since its inception in 2000 and will collapse if the state Supreme Court does not overturn a State Department order that the money be returned to the taxpayers. Well, they've already been ordered to pay $17 million from this workers' compensation pool to restore that to the Health Trust, because the administrative hearings officer ruled that they illegally removed that money from the Health Trust. Okay? And there are those in the room, their eyes are going to start to gloss over here. But think about it this way. If the town is told at some point that this pool, and the town of Plymouth, I just want to make clear, does not use the workers' compensation trust through the local government center. It does not. That insurance is bound through Primex, which is one of the other risk pools. But other towns in our communities locally do have workers' compensation coverage through this pool. And if there is not sufficient money in the risk pool to pay claims, and the pool becomes insolvent, then under a different law, which is really under the Department of Labor's purview, and I think I've given you one of that, the Department of Labor can actually ask that those losses be charged back to the members. So you think you have workers' comp, and you might not. So my concern about the process and my request on the 91A is as follows. I have been informed by some sources through information that has been revealed through the right to know law that today, going back to this trial that they had, there were a total of 8 separate law firms that represented the LGC Inc. in this litigation. I'll call it litigation. These are not law firms that are doing this on a pro bono basis. These are not law firms that are from New Hampshire Legal Assistance. These are probably the best law firms in the state, and they charge a lot of money. In my world, as an attorney, in evaluating whether a client should get involved in litigation, one of the things you always have to evaluate is how much is it going to cost this client? If it's going to cost this client $10,000 to recover $5,000, is that cost effective? Is that a good thing to happen? So 8 law firms. I went down to one of the hearings and was amazed at how many different lawyers were involved on their side. And in addition to that, at the conclusion of the cases, I think you know, the order was to, basically return the money to the cities and towns. I have been at a meeting in my own wonderful hometown, as well as in the town of Warren, where the Bureau of Securities, on behalf of the Secretary of State, has presented information to towns. And long story short is, to date, without even any briefs being filed in the New Hampshire Supreme Court, we're up to $1.9 million, $1.9 million in legal fees and costs. And you can say, well, gee, that's a pretty good that's a pretty good payment. And the reality is, though, it's the taxpayers that are paying these bills. Okay, everybody in the town of Plymouth who is paying their property taxes, part of this money is going to pay these fees. So I sit back and say, well, gee, is that a cost-effective thing to do? Is that a good idea for the taxpayers in the town of Plymouth to be contributing to? Which is part of the reason I've asked the town to formally make this request, because the $1.9 million to date is only through August of 2012. And we have not even filed briefs in the New Hampshire Supreme Court yet. In addition to those legal fees, the Bureau of Securities Counsel, their legal fees have also been ordered to be paid. And I think they're up to $571,000.
Ordered to be paid by?
By the LGC Inc. And again, when I was at some of these meetings, and I was at one in particular in Warren, there were other town officials from other towns there. And I heard a few say, why are we doing this? Why don't we just try to resolve these matters? Which I think would make a lot of sense. I don't know. But all I know is that the taxpayers are continuing to bear the brunt of this. I have given you tonight a couple of other pieces of information. Apparently, a risk pool in Kentucky recently has become insolvent. I've given you a copy of that article. And what happens in these situations is, if the risk pool doesn't have any money, the losses get passed on to the taxpayers, okay? So once again, there is no free lunch here. If you have an entity that is putting, in my humble opinion, taxpayers' money at risk, is that a prudent thing to have happen? I'm asking also that you consider asking about other costs and other litigation that the LGC is involved in. I understand that there was a dispute involving the town of Hopkinton, in which they had a building that burned down, and found out after the fact recently that the coverage was inadequate, and that they did not have adequate coverage. That's under the property liability line. I've given you some copies of some of the email addresses for some of these other articles about what's happening in Kentucky. Not because I know you have nothing else to do, but because I think it's timely. And my concern is, on behalf of our town, and I'm only here as a taxpayer, at some point, I think this entity has to be accountable to the member towns. We are a member of the New Hampshire Municipal Association, LLC. The New Hampshire Municipal Association, Inc., the former nonprofit, does not exist. The entity they have now is called New Hampshire Municipal Association, LLC, a for-profit entity. You know, at the end of the day here, I sort of feel enough is enough, and we should at least ask them to consider withdrawing the appeal and stop the incurrence of legal fees and costs. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. I know we have some other important matters here tonight, so I don't want to take up all your time. If you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Do you have any sense as to whether similar conversations are taking place in other town halls or city halls around the state?
Yes, I believe they are. I believe they are. And I think just posing the question, you know, is it in the best interest of Health Trust, for example, which is supposed to be receiving back money that was illegally transferred from one pool to another? Is that in the best interest of that trust to appeal this decision? Okay? And one of the underlying issues here, and all of you have been involved with nonprofits, all of you have been on the board of directors of some entity. If you have one board that is making decisions for subsidiary entities that were formed in 2003, Health Trust LLC, Property Liability LLC, query as to whether or not that one board can be objective and give conflict-ridden advice about whether something is important. I started practicing law when I was about 10, so I've been practicing now for about 30 years, as you can tell. And I've been in this business a long time. I have appealed cases to the New Hampshire Supreme Court. I would almost guarantee to you that the administrative order will be affirmed. It will be affirmed. The question is, what is the cost to the taxpayers all this time while that decision is being made? So I thank you all for all your service and the service of our town employees. I appreciate it all very much. But I think the town of Plymouth and all towns in our state have better things to do with their money than spending millions of dollars on legal fees.
Just one other question.
Yes.
Sort of in this current round of litigation that we are sort of inching into, is there any attempt to mediate this? Or has mediation just kind of been pushed off the table?
I only know what the Bureau of Securities has told me, Dick, and it's a very good question. My understanding is that every step of the way, the LGC has refused to do that. So that's my understanding. And again, in my world, is it better for people to sit down at a table and try to work something out without going to court? Of course it is. I was just at a meeting at my law firm with some parties and the other lawyer to try to do that. That's what you try to do. Because the cost of litigation, business people in this room, other people, you know that at the end of the day, you're going to get a far satisfactory result if people can come to the table and work something out.
Yeah.
It seems to me, at a time when we're reading articles about the former LGC executive director being offered, an exit severance package of $189,000, when the law firms are doing okay here, I just want the taxpayers to do okay. I'm waiting for the day when we get our money back. So one way of doing that is to withdraw the appeal and sit down and work with the Bureau of Securities and comply with the order and comply with New Hampshire law. I don't think that's too much to ask. But I hope I've answered some of your questions, and I really appreciate your having me. Any other questions from anybody else that I can answer?
One, in a nutshell, if it's doable, with this complex subject, what's the principal foundation for the appeal?
I haven't read their briefs. One of the issues has to do with the way under RSA 5B surplus is calculated, okay? Because the statute basically says, and this has been the law since, 1983, that this is a nonprofit risk pool that is exempt from the insurance taxes, from the business enterprise taxes, from other state taxes. If you're an insurance carrier, you are regulated by the insurance department in the state of New Hampshire, and there are costs to being a commercial carrier. This pool is not bearing those costs, okay? Because why is it? Because the idea is that you're pooling money among a number of communities to try to reduce healthcare costs. And it's interesting because at the meeting that I attended in Warren, after the presentation, one town employee from another town said, I've been listening to this and I have always felt very favorably inclined towards the NHMA, New Hampshire Municipal Association. But as a town employee, I'm really realizing that my own share, my own contribution to the health insurance coverage I have has continued to go up. And there was no need for that, because the excess surplus, to answer your question, should be going back to the taxpayers. That's the way the law has always been, okay? And the reason I'm trying to respond to that question is that the way the Bureau's expert calculated the surplus was something that they've challenged. Now, I really don't want to put everybody to sleep here, but the LGC has a actuary from New Jersey that they've used, which uses a commercial calculation of how they calculate reserves. It's called the RBC, risk-based capital. I don't really understand it. I'm not a math person. But the reality is it was a commercial standard that the administrative hearings officers and the Bureau's expert disputed and said that's way too conservative. And if you think about it this way, if money is being withheld from the pools, okay, then it's not going back in terms of excess surplus. You've got to account for it somehow. So I think that's one of the issues. But again, I can't guarantee this to you, but I just don't think that the Supreme Court of our state is likely to overturn the administrative hearing officer. And so I'm saying to myself, well, what are we doing here? Why are we appealing this? And why don't we just comply with the law? And, that's all.
Thank you.
I hope that answers the question.
It was helpful, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions that I can answer for you?
Anything?
Okay. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in.
Now we've got discuss skate park CDFA request. Mike?
Good evening, everybody. How are you? We are applying for some CDFA money, which is the Community Development Finance Authority out of Concord. You're all familiar pretty much with what they do. We are looking to finish the skate park and are in hopes that this money will help us do that. So as part of the application, they want to see what kind of community involvement and what kind of support the project has. So we're seeking a lot of different, not just individuals, business people, local folks, but also various entities for support letters. So we've put requests out to various entities and have heard back from some who will gladly, nobody said no yet, but we haven't heard from a couple. So, so far so good. And just, seeing that some light reading with the master plan, and in looking at that, it seems like the skate park is something that fits into the master plan with the areas where they talk about recreational area being expanded. And our approach will be on the end of revitalizing and utilizing more space for recreation for people in the town and the area. And the master plan actually specifically identifies as an example a skate park. So I feel it's pretty much in line with what the town master plan and the town in general would be supportive of. So that's the request, is to get something from the board that would be in support of our efforts, and that it's something that's been pretty well received. I really haven't had anybody in the last 3 years indicate that they have a problem with it. It's been a real positive experience for us. But just like anything, these CDFA monies are very, very competitive. And we're not asking for a lot compared to what they start out with, but every bit counts. And it's very competitive, so we're trying to get as many folks involved as possible to let them see what kind of effort we've put in thus far, what kind of supports we've gotten from various entities as far as in-kind services with all the work Tom Samon's done with his for advertising and making our photos and pictures, and Rich Gowan and several business folks. I think Buddy Crane, who was one of them, that donated equipment and time to the note of about $35,000 to help prepare the ground for the construction. We have a final plan coming to us in the next week or two from the designer and builder, a company named Who Skates out of Kennebunkport, Maine, and we have hard numbers now that we need to finish the project. It's about $150,000 to finish it, but it's going to be a state-of-the-art concrete park, which there aren't many in the New Hampshire area. I think there's one down in Nashville, and maybe some small ones, but this will be quite a sight. And I don't know if you know, but we've got a graffiti park down there, which...
We actually took a bus tour of the town, and the skate park was one of our, the select board and a few other town employees just saw the highlights, and that was definitely one.
Well, the work's incredible, and what we've done is gone and they've cleaned it out. We're bringing in pine chips to put on the ground, and we have a person that's making benches out of old snowboards. And there'll be benches and seats there, so we'll have that piece. And then, but I mean, the crowning point and the expensive point is finishing the skate park itself. The other stuff we're going to do is minimal cost, which we'll raise on our own. We're going to put in a BMX pump track down the road once the skate park is finished. But this is the jewel, and this is the piece that's most expensive. And all the monies that we're seeking at this point are going towards materials, concrete materials, and the building. We've put up the fence containing the 6,000 square feet. We've done a lot of the work around so it's essentially every dime we get will go towards finishing that project, and that's what we're looking at.
I think everyone at this table has been to at least one of your fundraisers, and some of us to more, so I think you've got support.
When is the application due?
April 19th.
How much are you looking for?
We're asking for $170,000. They take 20% off the top for their own needs functioning, so we're looking at getting less $34,000 from that. But that will cover everything we need for the construction company to finish it. We're essentially, we've built 2,500 square feet in there. We have the bowl and the existing ramps and the little runway and whatnot. But so I expect with us, essentially more than doubling and almost tripling the size of it with skatable surface, it'll bring in a lot more kids. We get good usage now, but you can only get so many kids out there to skate at a time, and we just don't have enough surface. So this would just turn it into a whole different, put it in a whole different level.
Do you have any? So do I have a motion to prepare and submit a letter in support of this grant application by the skate park?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
I will say that Mike made the motion and Charlie seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
And I want to use this platform to ask anybody watching on TV, if they want to buy some tax credits, give me a call.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
And before we move on, I would also ask that the board members review the newspaper articles and the information that Deb Reynolds provided concerning LGC, so that we can be fully informed at our next Monday's meeting, so we can make our decision about that letter as well. Okay, next on the agenda is Candidates Night. There is a Candidates Night scheduled for Tuesday, February 26th. I think all of the select board, 5 select board candidates and 3 Plymouth Village Water and Sewer candidates have agreed to participate. Actually, I don't know if all have agreed to participate, but they've all been contacted. John Roy has once again agreed to be our moderator. Scott Stevens from the Chamber of Commerce will be the timer. And one thing that we have to, I think, talk about a little bit is the way that questions get submitted on this thing. We've done it a couple of different ways in the past, and most recently, it's been to have people submit questions to the town hall so they can be reviewed in advance, not to be screened so much, but so as duplicate questions can be combined, or, that we don't have the same question asked 3 or 4 times. But it's only a week away, so there's not a lot of time.
I will abstain from this discussion.
I understand. Candidate Gosney?
Do we know where it's going to be?
It's at the Smith Recital Hall at Silverside, which worked out well because the acoustics are very good there.
Is that where it was last time?
It was.
Is the format going to be the same, where the question is asked to each?
Yes, it'll be, each candidate will have a chance to make an opening statement, which I think in the past has been 3 minutes, and we'll stick to that. And then there'll be a question asked that is for the select board candidates, and each of them will answer it. The moderator will identify the order in which they answer it, so it's not always the same candidate going first, second, third. They'll get mixed up through the night.
What time?
It starts at 5:30, I believe. It is on the town's website, and I believe the time is 5:30. I know we made it an earlier starting time.
Is it going to be televised?
It will be, Juliet just confirmed that it's 5:30, yes. PVTV will be there filming it. It won't be live broadcast, but it'll be shown on Channel 3. So I think, what I'd like to suggest, given the short time frame, is that we would ask people to please bring questions to the town hall. And Kate, I think the last time around, we had a box for people to put questions in at the selectmen's counter.
Is it possible to email the question?
Email the questions, that can happen too.
Who
And
would that go to?
Mary, it'll go to the town hall.
so, and the address for that is it,
Easily available?
is it
on the site?
available?
Yeah.
It's line on the town website.
Yeah,
Okay.
so email address on the town's website. Questions can be emailed to the town hall. And Brian, did you have something?
Yes, I did. This was just brought to my attention by Sharon, that since you're including water and sewer commissioner candidates, they have a meeting that night. That's the 4th, they do it 2nd and 4th Tuesdays of the month. So I don't know if there's any play in schedule for the night, or...
I don't know if any of their candidates are running for re-election or if they're all new
No.
candidates.
No, because I think it's Dick Flanders whose
Right.
term is up.
Just new candidates.
And he's not running.
It's all new candidates, so those candidates wouldn't necessarily have to attend the water and sewer meeting.
But it's kind of pulls them away from where they're...
Understand. That was the only night that the Smith Recital Hall was available, and we're coming up on elections, so we really are under kind of a time crunch here. And the moderator has asked that the select board be available at that event, so that if we do accept any questions that evening, they will have to be in written form, but he's asking us to review them and make sure that the same consolidation process takes place as will have occurred in advance of the candidates' night. So, but I think we'll see how many questions we actually receive and make the decision about whether it's necessary to accept any more questions that evening. But please, everybody, come to that. It's a chance to see who's running and hear what they have to say. Any other questions by the board? Okay. Next, we have request for painting on downtown sidewalks and signage with quick response codes to promote our 250th anniversary celebration. And this was a request that came in from the Plymouth Historical Society, Lisa Landari, They are asking that sidewalk decals or stencils similar to the ones that are there for the storm drains be put at locations that identify where historically significant events occurred in our town. And these will be things that, they won't be permanent. They'll wear off the same as the fish decals on the storm drains do. But they'll be available for the 250th celebration, and they will have signage that has the quick response code that can be read with the cell phone, so that people can go directly to the website for either the 250th or for the Historical Society and get detailed information about what actually took place at each of these spots. Paul, do you have more info? Did that cover it? So they have asked our permission to do that, and Lisa Lindari is actually working with a group of Plymouth State students on this.
Sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, good,
All right, so
good PR.
I saw Steve Rand here. Was he for that?
we had a 250th
Meeting?
committee meeting before this meeting, so everybody was here, continuing to work on that plan, which is developing into quite a plan. I guess the next event that is scheduled is going to be the history of Plymouth ski history, a reminiscence night on Tuesday, March 12th at 7 p.m., which location to be determined, because they're expecting it to be a crowd that might exceed the capacity of the community room at the library. I guess the Draper Maynard event filled the community room at the library, so it sounds like this one's going to be an even bigger event. So can I have a motion to approve the request for painting on downtown sidewalks and signage with QR code?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Dick, seconded by Charlie. All those in favor? Aye. That is approved. And the next item also has to do with our 250th anniversary celebration, and that has to do with invitations to the governor and other requests for dignitaries to attend and to different government bodies to provide us with proclamations. There's a laundry list of, and there has already been an invitation extended to the governor on an official level. I don't know if we've got a definitive answer to that yet. She is booked.
But having gone through this before, I think a letter from the board of selectmen and the other individuals that happen to know her personally. We've had this happen many times where we try to get the governor here for an event, and the staff who we're required to go through say that the governor is booked. And the governors themselves have found ways to come to events in Plymouth. I think she won't be any exception. So I think it would be important that the board could send out.
Would this be for that July date?
Yes, it would be for there is going to be a ceremony on the town hall lawn that will start at 11:30, and I think it's at 11:30.
It's 11:30.
And there's a small time window for it, and we will all be there, and we'll have an official part in it, but the governor will have if she's here, she'll speak. The others I was thinking of, and just based on the event at the museum last night, I think it would be good to invite Congresswoman Custer. She was here for that, and seems to have a soft spot for Plymouth. And of course, all of our local elected representatives, I'm sure will plan to attend anyway. But as far as requests for proclamations, we could certainly ask the New Hampshire House, the New Hampshire Senate. I don't see any reason not to go to the U.S. House of Representatives and the United States Senate to ask for something as well. And, even the White House, why not?
Maybe we could get the president to come.
I think he's booked.
You think he's booked?
I don't know. But anyway, does anyone have any other ideas of?
Yeah, well, so who's actually going to do this? Kate. I wonder if, I mean, there's no, I mean, it's great, we should do we should do these things, I don't think there's any doubt. It's just a question of who's actually going to follow through, right?
Well, I think, my only other question is, I mean, I can certainly work on it. That's an easy enough thing to put together. And the only question I have is, I think all of us should sign it.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. So whatever letters we send out asking for these things are all signed.
Yeah.
And what about a letter, I think Paul is suggesting we write a letter from the select board, I think,
Yes, to the governor, definitely.
And I can help, with writing any of these things if you'd like.
Very good.
Okay, so Kate, I guess you're off the hook on that. Don't say I never did anything.
All right, and if anybody thinks of others that,
Sure.
should be included in the invitations, then we can discuss that as we get closer. But I think most of our, like I said, our local officials are already have it on their calendars, so. All right, next we have the police department grant applications for speed and DWI enforcement. And this was something that Steve Lefebvre actually did brief at our work session because he had a police department training tonight. But what we have is grant applications for two separate grants that total $13,717,039, and they are for police activities that take place annually. So
I would make a motion to approve those grant applications.
I will second that.
all right, it's been moved by Mike and seconded by Ray. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Those grants are approved. Moving on, next on the agenda have chairman's comments, and my only comment tonight, I would like to offer congratulations to Highway Department employee Jeremiah Sargent, who has achieved the status of Rhodes Scholar 1, that's R-O-A-D-S, Scholar 1. This required a significant investment of his personal time and gives him excellent knowledge in the field of local road maintenance and construction. So, congratulations to Jeremiah. And from there, we go on to new purchase orders from Peter Furmanek.
I suppose, Madam Chair, a mitigation project for Cummings Hill Road and Texas Hill Road. When FEMA first comes out and estimates how much these jobs are going to cost, they're getting a full amount of that money, and the jobs came in under that amount. So that, along with our matching pot, gets reimbursed back to FEMA. We could have done it another way. We could have asked that we use that money in some other spots, but instead, we're getting a substantial amount of money again from FEMA, so we keep the paperwork cleaner and not have the two amounts of money get mixed up. And we give back the excess and accept the new grant going forward.
May I ask you what did it, this, we got a grant for something greater than 33,000, which is,
We got almost $300,000.
so our, the cost of doing it ended up being something like 10% less than the original estimate, and we're giving the money back.
It was $310,000 in grant funds.
Gotcha.
So this is money that's being paid back to the state of New Hampshire in the amount of $33,506.34. Is there a motion to approve this purchase order?
Second.
It's been moved by Mike, seconded by Charlie. All those in favor? Aye. It's approved. Next, we have Breslak and Company, municipal audit fiscal year 2011-2012, in the amount of $11,922.50.
And that's just, of course, inside the contract for our audit. It's the same amount as last year.
I move to approve that purchase order to pay Breslak and Company for our municipal audit.
Second.
Moved by Mike, seconded by Charlie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to committee reports. Dick?
I do not have anything, no.
Well, I did finally go to a water and sewer meeting last week, and there was some discussion about apparently the sewer main. I guess it's along Highland Street that's in need of replacement, and so they were talking about that. And there was also some discussion of this, the water and sewer permit for the McGinley property that we were talking about earlier. And that's all I have.
Have one, and I'll try to avoid getting into the weeds, but there was a joint meeting at the most recent planning board session with two adjacent towns, Bridgewater and Hebron. First time in a number of years, if memory serves me correctly, and the principal focus was the impacts that can occur from sometimes the smaller scale developments on the Class 5, Class 6, and driveway activities, and the need to appropriately communicate activities across town lines when there may be actions that are occurring in one town that could have impacts in terms of the use of roads in an adjacent town. It was a healthy discussion, and their takeaways essentially rested with the staff out here to continue to look for appropriate ways to engage each other in the various towns. So it was good to see that. It's been about 5 or 6 years ago we had a similar session like that. But I hope I stayed out of the weeds.
You did.
Good. Charlie?
Nothing to report.
Okay, the only thing I have to report is that the Campus Community Council meeting that had been scheduled for February 26th has been moved to March 5th to accommodate candidates' night. So, go on. Yes, Paul?
We're going to need to pick, we should start thinking for next Monday, meeting the polls, because we're going to be short one selectman.
That's right, so we're going to need...
So it's going to be a longer period of time.
Yep.
So, let's send out a general email with the time slot.
Yeah. And you usually
I'll be
want...
around, yeah.
Yeah, you usually want late and you usually want early, so Charlie and I can cover the middle of the day, so have John figure out the time blocks and we'll sign up. And I also had a question, Paul, for town meeting this year. I know that it is on the Wednesday following elections. What is the location?
Back to the school.
It's back to the elementary school.
It's easier for Park and Rec. For
Okay.
and set up.
Okay. I've had a few people ask me that question, and I just wanted to make sure.
I did see it's on the website too already.
Okay, good, good. All right. Have we any public comment this evening? Hearing none. Paul, is there anything to be discussed in non-public? Have I a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Ray, seconded by Mike. All those in favor?
Aye.